And so we want our students to be in a position where even in 5 years from now, they're going to be potentially interacting with technology that wasn't even created today, right? So how do we prepare a student to be successful with technology that doesn't even exist? Well, that's when we really focus in on those skill sets that'll never change, and the skill sets of being able to problem solve, the skill set of being able to collaborate with others, to learn with one another. Those 21st century skills, I guess, is what you've often heard, but now you'll hear the term go to employability skills. But those soft skills have to be a focus if we want to prepare our kids to interact successfully and productively with, again, technology that we don't even know exists at this time.
You're listening to the smartsocial.com podcast. I'm your host, Josh Oakes. This is our District Talk segment where we interview district leaders to learn how they're keeping students safe on social media so those students can someday shine online. Now, let's get back to the interview.
Hi, I'm Dr. Avis Williams. I am the proud superintendent of NOLA Public Schools in New Orleans, Louisiana. And we are an all-charter school district, and we have 72 schools, about 43,000 students, and I am the authorizer for about 34 different charter networks. We call our students scholars because that's what they are.
Hello, I'm Rob Clayton, Superintendent, Warren County Public Schools in Bowling Green, Kentucky. We are the fourth largest school district in Kentucky with a little more than 18,000 students, 23 regular A1 schools, comprehensive schools, and then we do have 7 sites where we offer alternative programming. It's a very diverse school district represented by a little more than 90 countries and over 120 languages, dialects.
I'm Gustavo Balderas, Superintendent of Schools in the Beaverton School District, a west side suburb of Portland, Oregon, that services roughly 40,000 kids on 54 campuses.
In the age of one-to-one, how are you preparing students for positive technology use in the classroom?
So one of the things that we're doing is called a portrait of a graduate. Not a new concept, but we're making sure that for pre-K through 12, that the work that our scholars are doing in the classroom, that those items are aligned with what they need for workforce and for college in the future. And technology is no exception to that. And so part of it is looking at workforce needs and demands. It's looking at what happens when our scholars go to college. You know, what are the gaps that they have? So one of the things that we really aim to do through our portrait of a graduate is to ensure that we're filling in any gaps that have been brought to our attention, either by our university partners or our workforce development partners. And again, technology is no exception to that. We oftentimes talk about 21st century learning, even though we're 2 decades into the 21st century now. And we know that many of the jobs that our scholars will fill don't even exist yet. So what is it that we need to ensure that they know and that they're able to do as it relates to technology? And so we use that type of information and that type of intel from our partners to help inform that. And then there's also a space where, you get interest analyzers to make sure that what scholars want to do, what they want to learn, and how they want to learn is also part of how we're using technology. So again, giving them a voice to be able to be curious about their learning and so forth. And we have moved beyond the traditional one-to-one learning in terms of making sure that not only are we engaging scholars, but we're challenging them to think critically. We're challenging them to be leaders within their community, and we're challenging them to own their learning as it relates to how they use technology and the role that plays in their learning.
Well, we know that the use of technology can not only expedite the level of learning in the classroom, but it can also enable us to engage in really much greater depth into the concepts that we feel that our students need to know. It also helps them build their own interpersonal skills, if you will, when they're utilizing technology in a way that helps them grow through their experiences, whether it's manipulation of a text or an activity in a particular classroom. one of the challenges that we faced with that is there is a huge expense behind ensuring that we have high quality technology in front of our students. But it's something that, again, just like social media, it's not going anywhere. And we want to be in a position where our students not only know how to use the technology, but can use it in a manner that is ethical, use it in a manner that'll make a positive difference. But I don't think there's any question as the technology has evolved, and now we're looking at AI. We're really trying to wrap our brains around that. But the reality is, technology makes our world much more efficient. It does empower us to be able to accomplish much more. But then we're also cognizant of the potential downfalls if we're not ensuring that our students not only have the skill sets to utilize it in a productive and ethical manner, but then there's a lot of unknowns. And we want to make sure that, at least from our standpoint, we're in a position where it doesn't really lose our or get out of control, so to speak.
The age of 101, it has to do with just training. And, I think a big worry would be AI and the impact of that in the future. Chat GPT is all the rage now. And just making sure the kids understand how to utilize technology in the right way. Because everybody has technology on their person, whether a Chromebook or an iPad or a computer. So just making sure kids understand, just how to utilize and leverage technology in the right way to expand their education. And I think what technology has done for schools is really provided another way, another manner for kids to be educated, so that kids don't have to just be in a classroom and brick and mortar. They can be home and they can revisit their lessons at home if they have Wi-Fi. I think that's another thing, is the access of computers at home, because again, not every family has access to really effective Wi-Fi. And that's, to me, more of a social justice issue than anything else, because again, kids that have and kids that have not I think that's another topic that I'd like to maybe delve into down the road. But right now, technology has really leveraged access to kids across our system, across our 54 campuses.
How have you been successful in increasing parent engagement to help keep students safe on social media?
I think the parent engagement piece, I think, has really changed the pandemic changed the narrative in terms of how we even view family engagement, because we did realize that there are ways that we can have communication with parents, ongoing communication with parents, regardless of their schedules and whether they can make it in person or not, whether they have transportation or not. So I think for me, one of the biggest things is just the ability to leverage a virtual meeting, to leverage the fact that we have multiple ways to communicate. It's not just the folder going home every day and newsletters and that type of thing. I think a space where we still need to grow is being able to use that for two-way communication, and even to the point where it's a space where families can go to get more information, keeping those things updated, keeping the information robust and fresh. That's an area of growth for us that we're still looking at, some various engaging platforms that will help increase family engagement and increase our transparency. That's always an issue for school leaders. I had a community engagement meeting a couple of weeks ago, and was working with some of our English learners and their families. And one of the things that they brought to our attention is the lack of transparency that they see from the language standpoint. And so that was an area of growth for us, even coming into the school year. And even though we've made some strides, we still have work to do. And technology is one of the ways that we will do a better job in terms of our language inclusion. And we also have to continue to just listen to families and make sure that the information that we're sharing is, in fact, the information that they need.
So it does look a little different at each of our schools because of the autonomy that we place on each of our school principals and their staff. But I think the biggest thing is kind of opening the lens into our classrooms. We have teachers highlighting the activities that occur in their classrooms virtually every day across the district. We show our parents and our school community the products, if you will, of some of the work that occurs in the school. And then again, many of our students will utilize social media to garner additional information, whether it's in relation to a project that they're working on, whether it's in relation to research. But again, we know that that interconnectivity between our people looks a lot different when you have the ability to access social media.
I think that's a great topic that we need to really dig a little bit deeper. I think we could do better in terms of just making sure parents, we have 109 languages. We have 50, almost 58% of our kids are kids from diverse backgrounds, high poverty level. So how do you really engage parents that aren't overly engaged in our school system? Because you always have your parents that are engaged, and our board meetings or PTAs don't look like the representation of our community. So how do you really reach out to the broader community to have them truly understand what impacts of social media are on their student in their language? I think that's one thing that we can do a better job in schools, is making sure that there's outreach to our kids in their native language and to their families in their native language to ensure that they understand the impacts of what's happening with their students.
Are there any stories that come to mind about any social media incidents you have been able to get in front of or avoid by being proactive?
I'll give you an example. One of the things that as a superintendent I sometimes have to do is make tough decisions around school closures and school moves. To get ahead of a situation, I recorded a video and shared it with all of the families so that they were aware of the community meeting that we would have, but also it gave context for what the meeting was and what it wasn't. Because I did realize that there were some misunderstandings about the messages that we were sending out. And I think part of the problem for us on our end was we had two different people communicating rather than just one. And so by doing something as simple as recording a video and posting it on social media, we were able to avoid a situation that could have been a whole lot worse in terms of families being upset. And we were able to correct the information that was misconstrued through a previous communication. And, for us, it was just a lesson learned in terms of, yes, we can tell our own story and make sure we drive the narrative, and we can use social media and technology to do that. And we have to also make sure that the right hand knows what the left hand is doing within our internal teams. And we've absolutely taken that as a lesson learned and have done a better job of streamlining our communication while also working hard to be proactive. One of the things that I really value is using data. And I've really gotten in tune to what we call street data. And using street data to be proactive, because the reason that I knew that there were some potential challenges with the messages that had gone out about the school move was because of street data. People who felt comfortable sending me a text message or an email and saying, "Hey, we're upset. Please tell me this isn't true." And in fact, it wasn't true. And we were able to make that correction again by just sharing a simple video with families and still inviting them to an in-person meeting. Because one of the things that they were upset about was that they thought the only opportunity that they had to engage about the school move was going to be a virtual meeting, and they felt that was disrespectful. And so we had some virtual options, but then we also had an in-person meeting. And I was able to share all of that in the short video that I did.
I don't know if we've been able to entirely get in front of some of these challenges with social media, but what I will tell you is anytime that we become aware of a concern related to social media, we typically treat it as a safety concern. And what that means to us is we need to exhaust all of our available resources to not only understand the particular concern. Typically, in my experience, it's been anonymous threats that are made. We have to go to great lengths to try to identify how credible the particular threat is before making decisions and determining the next steps. But I do think when that first surfaces, we try to be proactive in terms of not allowing significant time to pass, because as we all know, if it is a concern, a threat in this example that's on social media, it's going to spread very quick and it's going to become extremely disruptive. And so one of the things that we have to do is make sure that once we have gained enough information is we communicate out to our parent community and let them know that we are aware of the concern that's been brought to light through social media. Here's the steps we've taken to address the situation, and then also let them know that should something change, we would be in a position to follow back up with them. All of it really comes down to communication. Communication is a really key aspect when you're addressing these types of concerns.
I think there's a lot of situational issues that occur, specifically at the high school level. That's where you get a lot of these hints from people, these photos, these photo clips from folks that people get off their phones, and a lot of times it's parents that are actually being proactive, looking through their kids, or kids reporting to their parents, hey, this is what I saw on social media, what should we do with this? And then parents are reporting to staff, and we report with law enforcement. So there's on any given week, there's always issues where police are involved with situations on a campus because if somebody reported something that they saw on social media, whether it be an active threat or a non-active threat, it's still reported. And I think that's the one thing that we're trying to continue to train kids. If you see something, hear something, say something. I think that's something that's always top of mind for us, is making sure kids understand, even if it's innocuous, even if you don't think it's a real threat, report it and let the authorities be aware, or let the adults in the system be aware of that threat so that we can actually respond or report the response to law enforcement if needed.
What would your advice be to educators and administrators to work together to create a culture of digital safety and responsibility in their schools?
I think to create a culture where you've got digital safety, you have to involve all stakeholders. One of the things that we've leaned into is also involving our local police department and the DA's office. What type of reports are they getting that we can be proactive on in terms of addressing? So one of the things that we do is we have student advisory councils. We also have family advisory councils and community advisory councils. And for issues that impact the masses, like use of technology, that's one of the issues that we would bring to each of the advisory councils, and sometimes even pull them together to discuss what are the specific challenges that are being faced, and how are they being handled now, and what are the gaps in terms of how they're being handled. In other words, what could we do better? Because it does take all. It takes everyone being aware of what those challenges are and looking at what the effective practices could be to remedy the problems. And then even more importantly, if we know what some of the challenges are, being proactive in preventing them in the first place. And our scholars are really one of the best pieces of intel for that, and making sure that they have a way to share information in a way where they feel safe, and protect it, because we don't want them to not say anything because they're afraid of any repercussions of making a report. So I do think it's important that we have a safe way for people to make a report, and to do so in a way that's comprehensive enough for us as leaders to be able to engage and to know what the next step might be in terms of problem solving. I know a couple of our networks really make sure that they include technology safety as it relates to all things safety. It's not something that's separate. It's embedded in how safety plans are written, and it's embedded in terms of how they talk to their teachers and their scholars about safety. And I do think that there are some great models of being able to do that. Because it should not be an add-on when we think about digital safety. It should not be an add-on. It should be inclusive of the other issues that we talk about as it relates to being safe at school as well as at home.
Well, I think first and foremost is really understanding what technology is out there. Our primary process for that is to make sure that we have the right people at the table when we're considering the challenges with a particular concern. And for us, it would be having our technology experts both within the district and any resources that we have outside the district to help us navigate some of these particular challenges. But again, for me, it really comes back to ensuring that we're communicating, we're learning, just as we are right now over the last 60 days or so. We've really seen a lot of information come out about the artificial intelligence. And we're, as a district, trying to determine what risk factors we have currently with some of the evolution of AI, but then also trying to ensure that we have a process in place to address the ethical use of technology, but then also a process for when there is a concern, how are we going to address it in a timely and efficient manner.
I think it starts with curriculum building, and I think it really starts at a very young age. So I think what we need to do is make sure we have the right curriculum at a very young age. I'm talking kindergarten, first grade, second grade, to start there so that kids understand the impact of social media and the use of technology. So again, these tools that we have are never going to go away. These cell phones that we have are never going to go away. So how do we effectively leverage education to ensure kids understand the impact of what they do on their cell phones or on their laptops? Again, not just at school, but at home. Because again, a lot of kids have these at school and they have access to their own data systems, their own data. They can be online on our campuses right now. So how do you make sure that we leverage and educate kids on the proper use? To me, it's always about the proper use. And because again, view it as an asset, not a deficit. Because if you view it as a deficit, banning cell phones from campus, that never works. That never works. So how do you educate kids on how to use it properly on campus?
What are your 1 to 2 biggest social media concerns for the future?
When I think about the safety concerns for the future as it relates to social media, I think it's some of what we're currently seeing is just using social media to be a keyboard bully, misconstruing information. And I just wonder, will our scholars, as they grow up, will they even watch regular news? Will they read a newspaper? Will they get authentic news? Or are they going to solely rely on social media as a resource? And that worries me because of the lack of accuracy that's sometimes there, and of course it increases our vocabulary because we have things like gaslighting and, other terms that have come into existence because of a lot of what we see with social media. So I think one of my biggest concerns is that social media will take away some of the authentic engagement, even with news that our scholars and our families have access to. And then I also just worry about whether our scholars will rely too much on it for social interaction, social engagement. Because at the end of the day, that human contact is necessary, and people need people, and especially as it relates to being comfortable with communicating, comfortable in your own skin as it relates to communicating. And so, for scholars who are already shy, social media might be a gateway to engagement, but I don't want it to be a replacement for authentic human engagement and human contact. And I know as more and more jobs have remote options, we'll have fewer opportunities to engage with in-person encounters. And I just hope that even as social media interaction may grow, that we still value the ability to connect with one another as human beings.
I think the biggest concern probably is really just a continuation of the current concern. Far too often there's just misinformation, and we want to use all media technology in a productive and reasonable manner, but unfortunately that's not the way of the world. And so I'm always concerned about information being spread that is not accurate far too often. I think many of us can say we've succumb to this from time to time. When you see it, your first inkling is to acknowledge that it must be accurate. But the reality is, social media has again given almost everybody a platform to share and say what they want. And from our standpoint, it doesn't take a lot to become disruptive, and especially if it's misinformation.
Social media concerns in the future that it's going to go down to a younger age. It's already down to a young age. And how do we continue to really delve our curriculum down to a younger age, the K-1-2s, and also to families that are non-English speaking families, to have them understand the impacts of social media. So those are the two: younger age and education for kids at a younger age of the impact of social media, and also to more families, because again, we tailor a lot to English speaking families, and we need to make sure that we tailor everything to all families. So more access to that education to the families, so that have them understand the impacts of social media.
Funding is tough. What advice would you give to other school districts to secure funding to create resources that parents need?
Yeah, funding is tough, and I think we have to be very creative. I love leveraging partnerships, and especially university partnerships where we can write grants. And a strong grant writing team is a must if you're serious about ensuring that you're getting access to additional funds. And I would say that the big piece of advice is just to make sure that you've got someone who understands the grant writing process, understands how and where to find grants, and understands the nuances that's involved with being successful with grant writing. I do think that there's lots of money out there, and it's up to us as leaders to be proactive in terms of doing the research and the legwork and the groundwork as it relates to finding those funds. But having strong partnerships when you're thinking about grant writing is certainly something that gives you some additional leverage and a boost in getting additional funds. And, and sometimes even just those partnerships in terms of from a philanthropic standpoint can be certainly beneficial. But between grant writing and partnerships, I do think that there's lots of opportunity out there for school districts to increase their funding.
Well, in Kentucky, we've seen a real shift of the funding moving from the state level more to the local level. And really what that has signified to me is that school districts have to establish very strong partnerships with their business and industry partners. That's something that is a priority for us over the last decade. Again, we're going to need the resources of many of our community partners to help us continue to educate our students at the level that they deserve, that we want to deliver upon, and relying on our legislators, relying on government to fill that void, I don't think is wise. And so really we've turned most of our attention toward building those strong, productive relationships with our community and business partners to help fund and provide some of these experiences. When we're talking about technology, we tend to get caught up in a particular device, if you will. But the reality is the technology that exists out there is very expansive.
Yeah. So I think it starts with each district's responsibility to educate their families, and making sure that you look at networks with your own communities, whether it's your chamber network, the city or county that you live in, because again, your issues are also the community's issues, and the community's issues are your issues as a school district. So making sure that you're unified in your approach to making sure that you're seeking resources as a broader community to make sure that you are having a solidified impact model as a community toward your constituents. Because again, a healthy community is a healthy district. A healthy district is a healthy community. So what does that look like as an entire region? So it's leveraging and having people understand the why behind it. So having the mayor, your commissioners understand the why behind everything. I think that's really, really impactful.
Thanks for listening to our smartsocial.com podcast. I'm your host, Josh Oakes. This was our District Talk segment where we interview school district leaders to learn how they're keeping students safe on social media so those students can someday launch into their future by shining online. This episode was brought to you by our smartsocial.com VIP program. It's called the Very Informed Parent Program, which helps you engage your students with teen-led video lessons. Stay one step ahead with our premium parent newsletter and discover hidden features on trending apps on teens' phones and our 54 plus live parent and student friendly events every single year. You can click on the link below to chat with one of our team members if you want a free pass to our VIP program to support your community with our smartsocial.com resources. And if you're a district leader who has a success story, we would love to feature you on a future episode. You can click the link below to reach out. Thanks so much for listening, and we look forward to seeing you on the next episode. Have a great day.